Hello, fine people. Now, this video is specifically. Is it that specific? I'm not sure. I want to talk about many things that are very interesting. This individual, whoever he is, I don't actually know him, has said. This is a very thought-provoking, stimulating video, in my personal opinion. So much so that I've actually written down notes of bits I want to go to talk about things. And specifically, I am going to be addressing points he makes about how people live nowadays, apparently, utilizing technology, why there are issues of kind of widespread depression, in my personal opinion. I'm going to talk specifically about some policies as well as meaning. And I'm also going to talk about ownership of the self. So this video is specifically for my older daughters, both of them. I very much doubt they will listen to this stuff, certainly not now, but when they're older, perhaps. We'll see. I might talk about them more specifically as I carry on. So, the first premise I want to make is that I think this video is excellent until towards the end, when it becomes a little bit rambly and a little bit too poetic for my liking, too meaningless, too unclear, too obscure, too also full of platitudes. But I do think that the first part is excellent. So I'm going to go to specific points and I'm going to react to specific bits. So this one is going to be probably a longer video than usual, but it's okay. I don't care whether somebody's listening or not. So this is documentation for the future. So let's hear what this chap, whatever his name is, I should have checked, but I didn't. Anyway. Cool. Let's go.
Require a podcast about it. So the Japanese have a term for this. Te Yukobo Shakai, the low desire society. And Kenichi Omai wrote about this, where he described it as a culture where people just stopped wanting. They're not chasing the dream anymore because they looked at the dream in horror after realizing it was a coffin disguised as a penthouse. So instead, they're trading ambition for equilibrium. And they're swapping that corner office for not having a panic attack in the parking lot. Now, if that sounds kind of beautiful to you, you're right. But if it also sounds like the opening act of societal collapse, well, you're also right.
So I don't think that... I'm going to take a step back before I carry on. I do not accept, as I've said in previous videos, the term society. Because what it does is it constructs an idea. It anthropomorphizes a group, which is nonsensical. Because a group entirely made out of atoms, all of which have common patterns, sure, but different ambitions, opinions, directions, whatever, conditions, circumstances, is just, the resolution is too low. This type of information can only be used by a statistician. So I don't accept that. Now, the two conclusions that he's put forth, specifically the one I want to focus about, is this collapse. And the problem is he calls it societal. And in this particular case, what he means to say is that a large quantity of individuals are collapsing in their level of ambition. At least this is my interpretation of it. And in a sense, he argues it's liberating for obvious reasons, not like letting go of an ambition is also giving yourself license not to have to work to chase it, right? And giving up of the ambition, however, is also a fundamental defeat. And if you are defeated in a certain battle for something, there is no way in which this can be seen as a positive, or as an objective positive. Losing a battle is not an objective positive. Licking your wounds after losing the battle and accepting your current condition and making the best of it can be a positive, considering. So I think that is the dichotomy that he is observing. I'm now going to jump forward to a different point based on my notes. Actually, am I already there? I'm basically there. So I'll just carry on. Like I said, I don't know if I've said it, but I'll say it now. If you want to watch the whole video of this chaps, I'll put it in the description so you can. And then you hear his entire thing, because I will be skipping bits at some point. In this case, I happen not to. So, carry on, sir.
And therein lies the paradox. A society that stops wanting things might actually find peace, but it also might stop functioning. And civilization, whether we like it or not, runs on desire. That's the engine. Desire builds cities, populations, it invents Wi-Fi. You know, it makes people start podcasts at 2 a.m. that nobody asked for.
Well, all too real. It's 3 a.m. though, but yes. Being serious though, so he said civilization runs on desire. This is again this fundamental problem with collectivization. Civilization runs on desire because civilization is made out of individuals, and individuals run on desire. In fact, they run on desire and healthily expressed as ambition. So human beings generally, and this is what I'm about to say is not an opinion. What I'm about to say is a fact and is reflected in numerous, in almost all, I would say, video games, pieces of entertainment, etc. How we gamify growth, right? I said the dreadful we. I apologize, but it is true in the sense that generally, growth, gamification of growth, like for example the RPG experience bar, the experience bar of an RPG game in video games is now pervasive. It's used in almost every software, including stuff that's completely irrelevant. Like if you use Waze, for example, to navigate from point A to point B in your car using GPS, it's gamified. If you tell other people that you saw an accident or that you saw an impediment on the road or something, you get certain little points with icons of hearts. So this is a fact, what I'm saying. Human beings, generally speaking, enjoy or find meaning in improvement and growth, or ambition, if you will, or desire for something. And the best way to obtain it is through progressing, through grinding, to doing something, doing some form of work to go from point A to point B, to develop. In fact, it kind of matches the physics definition of work, meaning I now am at a different place, figuratively and practically, I suppose. So in that sense, civilization runs on desire. In that sense, it makes humans invent Wi-Fi. Well, one human, I suppose, and then a group of them to develop it, and so on and so forth. But one of the raisons d'être, what's the plural? I guess raison. I don't know. I don't speak French. Is to improve. And this is very important for what's going to follow. So I'm now going to skip forward a little bit. We are going to go over here.
We're not actually choosing peace. We're retreating into it. We've hit this global burnout where even ambition feels embarrassing, where trying too hard is bad manners, and the most radical thing you can say at a party is, "Yeah, I'm content," and it's right there in the data.
It's not radical to say that you're content. What you are describing, sir, is not somebody who is content saying that they are content. Being contentness indicates a lack of desire, at least as I interpret it, for that desire has been achieved. Or that desire was so ambitious in the first place that it was out of the realm of possibility, meaning it was a silly desire in the first place. It was more of a silly dream as opposed to an achievable one. In that sense, I think that is a problem. But the example that you brought forth to describe this party and this individual saying that they are content in being that radical by doing it is fundamentally a deceptive individual. And the deception isn't really towards others, though it does manifest itself that way. It's a deception towards the self. Yes, I'm content doing something I'm not particularly happy doing, going somewhere I'm not particularly happy going, and having accepted that I suppose for me there is no family in my future, there is no girlfriend in my future, or whatever. That is not contentment, that is resignation. As you yourself said, you're not choosing peace, you're retreating into it. But a retreat is a fundamental sign of defeat, which I suppose you have accepted, and therefore you embrace the contentment of the acceptance of a failed circumstance and making the best of whatever's left. So, yeah, he is describing a very sad state of affairs. There's underlying elements to this, which I'll get to in a moment. Well, in a moment, whenever I do. So, next bit.
I just want to stop feeling like I'm losing all the damn time.
Excuse me. He said, I don't need to conquer the world. I just want to stop feeling like I'm losing all the time. Carry on.
That's the core of the low desire society. It's not really about hating ambition. It's about realizing that ambition just doesn't love you back. And it's about developing enough self-awareness and self-respect to just say no.
I'm going to stop here. So, he said something interesting. He said it, in my opinion, in a very incorrect way, but he said something interesting. He said, it's about realizing that ambition doesn't love you back. Now, that's obviously an allegory, because ambition is not a person or a thing. So it's a rhetorical figure here. But what he means to say is that you can have all of the ambition in the world, but it doesn't mean you're going to achieve the things that you want. Now, let us, of course, posit an individual whose ambitions are in line with achievability. Meaning, if I have the ambition of becoming the next Michael Jordan at the age of 41, as an example right now, that is a silly dream. It's something I may desire intrinsically or whatever, but it's obviously impossible. So it doesn't make any sense. We are going to assume that the subject in question doesn't have dreams like these. We're going to assume dreams that are achievable. However, as he said at the beginning of this section, I just don't want to feel like I'm losing all the time. And now I want to speak specifically about something. I believe at this moment in history, which feels extremely different from the moment in history in which I was born and grew up as a young man, and in fact even went into adulthood, so that would be 20 years ago. The world that I care about, the West, has devolved backwards into what I'm going to simplify and call socialism or communism. What do I mean by that? I mean that every country one goes to, and I've lived in several, in very different places still in the West, and all of them have this problem. The countries have a redistributive machinery of wealth. Now, this looks like I'm going in all sorts of weird directions, but I promise there is a rationale to this. I just need to get around to explaining it. So, money and earnings as a general concept are the fundamental gamified measure of your progress. Money is just a measurement of your thanks for your effort and time as a fungible purchasing power unit. That's what it is. That's one of the reasons why it's a fantastic tool. However, for various philosophically bankrupt reasons and ethically dubious reasons, the money that you are accumulating with your effort to then use for yourself, and by for yourself I mean in extension of yourself, could be your family, could be your personal desires, could be your long-term goals and ambitions and whatnot, is removed from you. And it is removed from you in various ways. For example, if we take Canada, where I've lived and worked for 10 years plus, you have a income tax that is based on your on levels of income. The higher your level of income is, the higher the percentage of tax that is extracted from you, and you can't protest it. It's just how it works. There is a small trick that you can use where you can transfer some of your money directly into your pension plan. That deduction, that removal, is then removed from your perceived income that year. And because of that, you could then go down to a different step of taxation where you're taxed less. Let's bear in mind, this is obviously a silly trick, right? But it's something very many people do. Other elements that play a part in this, again, just to lower the income tax, are, for example, health insurances offered by your employer. Your employer offers those in order to reduce your salary, in order to reduce their burden and reduce yours. Everybody's winning. These are all silly, awful tricks that are necessary because of the tyrannical system that exists to extract your progress. Now let's bear in mind that while this thing that I'm saying sounds shallow, like, oh yeah, money is all that matters. No, not really. But money does, or income does reflect your activity. In other words, you work in order to obtain progress in your life, and money is the easiest way to measure that progress. In fact, so much so that if you were able to accumulate enough money, you could do the thing that lots of people seem to dream of nowadays, which is to retire early, for example. That sort of thing. Okay, whatever your ambition and desire is. Sending your children to a specific private school that you think is going to give them the best chance. Doing Aikido classes for yourself. Whatever. There's a million ways. That's because, like I was saying, money is fungible. However, let's say, to return to my Canadian example, that you are in the middle of your life and you already have a career that is moving a little bit. You've grown a couple rungs, you've gone up a couple rungs on the ladder, and now your pay is decent. You're, let's say, just shy of the 3 figures, right? So you're doing fairly well. You're above average, but you're not by any means stellar. Okay? At that point, about 40 or 50% of your pay, thereabouts, is extracted from you directly on the income level. Now, however, we are not done. We need to start talking about the other types of tax that exist. Suppose you have decided that one of the metrics for your ambition is to own a home. You do not want to pay rent to other people as it feels like an eternal money pit. You want to try and build something a little bit more permanent for yourself and your family and so on. Okay, well, in order for you to do that, you most likely need to get a mortgage because you will never be able to afford a house at this time. It is completely outside of your capabilities. I'm not going to discuss why or reasons why it could be. I'm going to set that aside. I'm just going to accept it as a fact. Okay, so you go ahead and as you've been building your credit score and similar concepts, you have demonstrated that you are a trustworthy person to potentially lend to. So you're going to get a mortgage, and perhaps you're going to do like I did when I did it, and you're going to get a mortgage with an incredibly bad rate on purpose to pay as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Making payments so high that they actually chew your entire monthly wages, specifically so that you can get rid of this mortgage as fast as possible. Okay? But the mortgage becomes this very, very highly expensive rent that you pay and you hope that eventually you get at the end of that tunnel. The thing is, the moment in which you become a homeowner, there is now a new tax that you need to pay. And it's called property tax. Now, it's offensive that a tax is actually called like this because, once again, it underlines the communist nature of it. If I own something, I must pay. There is no rhyme or reason for this at all. Now, this tax is usually local. It depends on your place where you live and so on and so forth. But in all of North America, this tax is exorbitant. For example, all of my European friends will not be able to even comprehend what kind of numbers we're talking about. So if we go back to our middle-aged, semi-successful individual who after tax has been left, let's say from 90,000 to 45,000, all references to reality are purely coincidental, of course, or to personal experience. Okay, what you find is that 2-story house with 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, that sort of thing, average somewhere in a suburb somewhere, it's fairly chill, okay, is $4,000 a year. Okay, now that's a problem because that's 10% of whatever was left. Now, suppose you want to start accounting for another tax, which is sales tax. So that, let's keep Canada as an example, depends on where you live, because the various provinces have a different sales tax. Alberta being the cheapest at 5% because it only has the general sales tax, which is the central governmental sales tax, whereas British Columbia and Quebec and Ontario being the more expensive ones, because on top of that they have something they refer to as PST, provincial sales tax, at 7.5%. And I don't know which of the two is applied first, and then on top of it, the other one is applied on the total result of the price. Now, what is a sales tax? It's a tax that applies to goods and services that are purchased. The seller that sells you the services and goods is charging you a certain amount for that is their price that they want. Then that price is artificially increased because the government wants its slice. The province wants a slice and the central government wants another slice. So in Canada, the maximum, like I said, is about 12.5. That's, like I said, a misnomer because one tax is applied on top of the result of the other one having been applied. So it's slightly more like, I don't know, 12.7 or whatever. I'm not doing the arithmetic. It doesn't matter. Right? Let's say approximately 10%, just to keep it simple, is applied to that. Now that applies to every bill you pay. That applies to everything you purchase. That except for used goods from Craigslist as an example, that sort of thing. But say if you go to a store, you have to pay sales tax on every good. And so on and so forth. So let's assume, just for simplicity's sake, that of those 40,000 that were left, about 20,000 are necessary to live. I'm sure this is excessively optimistic. Let's say 30 actually. Let's go for 30. That's a little bit more reasonable. Say a small family or whatever. Well, hate to break it to you, but there's an additional $3,000 that goes away because of the sales tax. Now, my European friends again will be confused because for them sales tax is actually enormous usually. It's about double the highest Canadian one, right? So for them, it's a different ball game this altogether. So that's where they compensate the property tax being low. Okay, but then you need to remember that now that we're left with, what is it, 6,000, 7,000, let's say 10,000, just to keep it simple, in made money. Okay, now we need to pay other things, including additional taxes. For example, I need to pay road tax if I own a vehicle. I must, by law, pay insurance, and then there's sales tax on top of that. In British Columbia, as an example, in Canada, insurance must be purchased from the province. I have never lived anywhere else where this is mandatory. It's one of the most tyrannical things I have ever seen in my life. It's called the ICBC, I think. Then we used to have, in British Columbia, we used to have inspections for the car that were mandated. It was called Air Care. That had a cost. So all of these are extra taxes. Let us not forget that if you don't want to calculate all of your taxes yourself, you need to pay the services of an accountant who is also going to charge you sales tax for his or her services. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut it short now, considering how much I've talked about it. But fundamentally speaking, by the end of the year, you find yourself in a situation in which you are essentially left with nothing by the end of the entire process. Okay? This is a very, very, very big problem. Sounds like I took a very strange tangent, but I didn't at all. Because what this does is it completely removes the effect of your ambition. If ambition is the engine utilized to chase after a certain desire, a certain goal, right? Or desire is this engine, ambition, desire, whatever you want to call it. The accumulation of money, and therefore the expenditure of said money, or by consequence, the expenditure of said money in order to achieve said goal, is severely stifled, meaning your feedback system for what you put in is very damaged. Because of this, at some point, you're going to, as he says, retreat into peace. Because it doesn't make any sense for you to work really hard, because the harder you work, the more you get taxed in income tax. You may even potentially go to the next step if you're paid overtime. I've done this. And initially, my first job in Canada, I believe, paid about 18 grand a year, which is very, very low. And I did so much overtime that I reached, I think, 30 something. So it was in the next bracket. I did the same in England as well before. So stuff gets removed from you. Now, the initial proposition of this entire system was, yes, stuff gets removed from you, but you still have enough to feel like you're really progressing. I am certain of this. I've lived it. And nobody can take this from me. In 2007, when I first started working, I went from zero to hero, even though I was heavily taxed for sure. I made a stupid amount of pounds very, very, very quickly by working really hard. You do this and you start having a population that's more similar to the baby boomers. That's why they have those ideals. Like, if you work hard, you achieve things. And nowadays, things are a bit different because you can work as hard as you want, but you're progressing at a snail's pace. This has a very strong effect on your will to proceed, on your will to invent that Wi-Fi. And you start behaving like a communist, like a person that lives under communism, which I have also lived, although I was very little, but you could observe it around and you could listen to the jokes that the older gentlemen used to make around the table playing cards. And you would discover what they thought of the actual machinery. Particularly, for example, how much they used to joke about Russians, I remember. Ironically, I don't remember any of the jokes, which is a shame because they were really dark. Why would you, as a Russian communist, work really hard to, let's say you're a plumber, to do the best plumbing work you can? It doesn't matter. It's not like you get paid more if you work harder. You can work just as poorly as every one of your peers. You're still getting the pay at the end of the month. You're not getting any paid docked. There's no bonus anyway, based on merit or performance. It's absolutely nonsensical to progress further. And you're always given your equal value, whatever that is, which means it doesn't matter how well you do. It doesn't matter what your desires are. Nothing matters. You are not the owner of your own destiny. In the West right now, it is my personal belief that every single country in the West, generally speaking, has this playbook. The quantity of taxation and oppression through prices is now so severe that working really hard makes no sense. Therefore, you retreat into peace. If working hard doesn't produce anything and I don't get closer to my ambitions, I might as well give up on those ambitions, wave my white flag, and take a step back. Okay? And this has ripple effects on absolutely everything. From relationships to family, whatever you like. And this is not new in history at all. This has happened before, and it's just happening again. It's very sad that it keeps on happening, and it is particularly sad, unfortunately, I must say, that it's happening in America. That is more than just sad, it's heartbreaking. In fact, I have spoken numerous times already, it is very, very, very heartbreaking that it's happened so badly in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom now features as, I think, the place I would like to live in the least. Which is a damn shame, because I would call the United Kingdom my spiritual home, so to speak, if you'll pardon me the stupid esoteric language. Basically, where I felt the happiest, surrounded by people that, despite me not resembling them and not really behaving the way they did, I admired the way they behaved more than anywhere else I've lived. So, seeing the United Kingdom being reduced to this pile of tyrannical ashes and desperation and destitution and waste and crime everywhere, just seeing the communism once again manifest itself as it always does in the same way is sad. But yes, I made this story very long, but I think the explanation was important. I think this machinery, this very practical issue, is causing these less practical issues, and it's affecting essentially everybody. Hey, welcome to equality, right? Now, let us move on to the next bit. So far, everything I've said right now affects my children insofar as this is the universe they'll be playing with, most likely. The rule set they'll be playing within. Now, let's say.
That restless energy. And we told ourselves that wanting more was what made us human. And the second you stopped wanting, you stopped mattering. So in a sense, you became subhuman.
Well, you did, unfortunately. So now he actually, I think, argues the exact opposite, which is stopping wanting makes you better. You become the rat that leaves the rat race. He will use this analogy again further, or this example. Except, this is, I think, very well expressed by him, but to the contrary meaning of what I think he's meaning to say. You do become subhuman. That is the power of communism. That is the power of redistribution. He is correct in saying chasing after things, like I said, this is demonstrated scientifically nowadays as well. That's why all of the apps are exactly the same. Chasing things, chasing goals is it's almost a biological imperative for human beings. Okay? And when that is turned off, for whatever reason, in this particular case, because you notice that you're never getting closer to the goal, it makes you subhuman. You are indeed subhuman. In fact, I think nowadays humans are progressing not just to subhuman, but subhuman, like sub-chimp. The biological imperative of wanting to reproduce, gone. The imperative of trying to establish a strong relationship with a member of the other sex and then a family, gone. I mean, when a literal biological imperative like reproduction disappears, that's an issue. That's a very big one. Willingness to cook for yourself, gone. Willingness to get up in the morning, gone. If that's not subhuman, I'm not really sure what is. So, yes. In fact, he's going to be talking about, as he refers to it, the issue of antinatalism soon. Let's go.
Probably the most revolutionary act we have left.
He was saying that stopping chasing things is the most revolutionary act we have left. Anyway.
And then there's the issue of antinatalism. David Banatart argues that bringing a new person into the world is inherently unethical because existence guarantees suffering.
Great argument. The argument that only a complete retard could possibly make. In fact, he can make it because somebody has decided to put his butt onto this world, so he could make the argument in the first place. This is an entirely circular argument. It is circular insofar it is impossible to even conceive of suffering should one not be alive to do so. Suffering is in existence just as much as everything else is. Joy and whatever not. Ambition, exaltation, exhilaration. There are a lot of positives in this world just as much as there are a lot of negatives in this world. And quite a lot of these depend on choices that the individual makes, and some things depend on the circumstances around the individual. It is profoundly stupid to argue that it is unethical to give an individual existence, because the alternative is that the individual isn't. So, like, that individual can't even begin to struggle with the concept of ethics. Complete nonsense. This is typical rubbish that you could read in the postmodern literature. I have no idea who he's talking about, and I don't care at all. It is stupid. It's the kind of retarded platitude that 14-year-olds like to spout. It's got no value. This rubbish that you need to bear with all these idiots that declare nothing but their genius. Moving on.
Which means we've turned owning less into a lifestyle brand. So now you can buy a $300 minimalist lamp to help you stop wanting things. And that's the irony of modern corporate capitalism.
Oh, easy. Easy. It's the irony of what? Listen, I don't know what you mean by modern corporate capitalism. I've worked for corporations. I now work for myself. You clearly work for yourself. You're running this YouTube channel, which is fairly successful. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, right? But it is the individual that chooses to buy the $300 lamp that proves that he doesn't want things. Right? What you have described is a contradiction in terms. It is the individual who is committing the contradiction in terms. This is where I'm actually starting to talk to my kids a little bit more directly from this perspective. One of the problems of this video, and it's going to get worse later in the video, is that he collectivizes the people, using the pronoun we, for example, or terms like society, civilization, etc., to hide the fact that individuals have choice. He talks about the most revolutionary act is to now choose to refuse to chase the pellet that you can never get. Reasonable choice. However, that is not the one choice that you make. That is not the one choice that the individual makes in his life. There are thousands of choices the individual makes in his life. I long ago chose not to waste money on things. It is in fact an ancient strategy that has existed for thousands of years, financially speaking, for people to be very frugal. I will throw him an olive branch and agree that nowadays that strategy seems to have waned in popularity severely, to a point of it having become comical, like what he has described. The irony. But it is not the irony of corporate capitalism. It is the irony of the fact that the desire to the execution of a desire to acquire more things, to then have more things, is nonsensical. It is not supported by anything intelligent. In America, in particular, there is a very severe problem, so far as I understand, with the fact that people purchase things they cannot afford by default, accumulating credit card debt, accumulating all sorts of other forms of debt, taking loans, and so on and so forth. But that is very much a decision. There is no corporation or capitalistic entity that forces one to do that, with the possible exception of trying to go for a house when one needs to get indebted with a mortgage. Once again, I'm not going to go down in the weeds with that. It's a discussion that merits attention, but not for the purposes of this. I am a frugal man. At the moment, there are a lot of people on the internet that claim frugality is the answer and not wanting to buy things and so on and so forth. Okay? Well, in that case, because I am frugal, right now, I am impairing the success of these videos because I have a very cheap camera, I'm not turning on my light, and my microphone is something I've used for almost 2 decades now, and I have people in the audience telling me, hey, your videos are quieter than other videos, other comparable videos, and they are right. And I'm doing nothing to improve that because the microphone is over there, because I don't want to edit the videos, because it costs me time. Right? These are decisions that I make. I decide not to buy the Bose microphone. I decide not to buy the hairy ball that you put on your microphone so your P's and your B's are somewhat muted. I decide not to edit anything. To be frugal. Everybody can do this. And by you saying that the only way is to retreat, essentially, your defeatism is an Ouroboros of stupidity. It agrees with itself in its own failure and then pats itself on the back for having failed. It is your decision what you buy, when you buy it, how you buy it. Period. There's absolutely no discussion to be had. Arguing that corporate America, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, is pushing you into buying a $300 lamp is impossible. It is a nonsensical position to hold. Sorry. And as I was saying, this is to talk to my girls as well. My girls are very different from one another. The older one consistently, without fail, is a negative person, just like her father. Right? I am negative, generally speaking. I see the glass half empty all the time. She does as well. And what she does, just like her father, her first instinct is to find literally anything to blame other than herself. This has been going on for a long time. Now it seems to be coming back with a vengeance, with a very strong manifestation. Now that she's under more stress due to her own decisions. So, for example, she is consistently saying that she has no time and that she's tired. Yet she consistently goes to sleep very late. However, her obligations stop at around probably 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever it is. And then she goes to sleep at 3 a.m. Now, for example, I'm recording this video at 4 a.m. right now. And this video is going to go on for a while. Okay? So I'm going to probably stop at 4:30, maybe 5. Well, I'm still going to get up tomorrow morning because this is my decision. What she instead does, she doesn't have the wisdom to accept that her decisions cause her pain or cause her discomfort, whatever you want to call it. And instead blames that she's busy, that she's sad, that she's depressed, etc. I will, this week, invite her to watch this video And I will this week invite her to keep tabs on her own phone's screen time averages. I am willing to bet that her phone's screen time averages are a number so high per day that she will be embarrassed of herself. Now, will she take me up on this suggestion or offer? I very much doubt it, to be honest. I think she is now going into a direction in which inevitable failure is coming, and she needs to slam her face straight into it, at which point she will have an option of getting up and changing course or doubling down. And I don't think me as a parent, I have any power over any of this. My advice may or may not be heeded, may or may not be listened to. Now, the younger one is a bit different. She's got other issues. She's much more regimented and so on and so forth. But she also has struggles finding meaning and so on and so forth. She also has habits. One of hers is a pathological and fundamentally irritating level of defensiveness. She's had it for a very long time. It's in her character. This she takes from her mother, or it's very, very, very similar to her mother. So she will prompt for feedback, receive feedback, and then spend about 57 hours arguing how the feedback is not exactly right because of this or the other reason. What that, of course, does is it makes it so that the people that she prompts for feedback refuse to give her any, because it's a waste of time. And this means that she never obtains what she wants and she starts feeling slighted. These are all her decisions as well. She will have to change her character in order to be able to take the feedback. And the ambition should be, I must be able to obtain feedback and I must slowly crawl in that direction. The ambition for the other one is, I must be in control of my time and I must slowly crawl in that direction as well. Neither of them are doing anything to go in this direction, which means desperation is going to follow. Giving up may become attractive to do, the way he is describing. Bear in mind, this is no rat race and there's no capitalism involved in any direction. There's no external entity playing any part in any of this. There's no psychological trauma, to my knowledge at least, and there is no psychological pathology, etc. There's only one thing, you yourself and yours truly. Oh, that would be me, never mind. Me, myself, and I, there you go, to worry about and try to address the issues with a clear-eyed, honest mind. Fundamentally blaming external entities, especially when they're cosmic, like society or capitalism or whatever, it is dishonest. It is deceptive toward your own self. And this level of hypocrisy is going to damage you severely. And then you will retreat and you will call it a win, as he's doing right now. That's a problem. And it's not my problem. It's these people's problem. I'm happy. I'm unhappy if my children don't succeed, because I will have failed as a parent. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For now, the reason I do these videos is so that one day, if not today, maybe a tomorrow in which I'm not here, they will be able to see this and either agree or disagree. I don't know. To be perfectly honest, I do not know how it's possible to disagree to this point, to the point I'm making. But hey, it's happened before. So let us now move on to another bit. What did I put in my notes? Okay, just a conclusion, I think, to all of these points.
We're trapped in this
We.
weird paradox.
Are you?
We've got a society that runs on desire, that's self-destructing from too much wanting, and the only cure seems to be not wanting at all.
No. Let me rephrase the things that you've said. And I'm going to use your terms just so it's easier. You've got a society, that is to say a group of people, that is self-destructing because all of the desires of all of the individuals can't be achieved for numerous reasons. The individuals therefore feel that all of their efforts are wasteful. A lot of individuals therefore give up reasonably. Okay? And that giving up leads to desperation and leads to the dysfunctional society that you are in fact describing. Your argument, your assertion that not wanting is a solution is correct, but not in the way you frame it. Not wanting frivolous, useless things is a good idea because accumulation of acorns for a rainy day or for a bigger desire, while much, much, much harder because of the quantity of robbing that is happening to you or to the individual, much harder, is still possible. The alternative to that isn't squandering. Squandering is a hedonistic way of addressing a much deep-rooted problem, which is the desire of obtaining something meaningful and long-lasting and valuable. That is why, my friend, your eyes barely open enough so that your pupils are visible and nothing else. And I understand that because that's the same expression I tend to have. But it's not true that the correct direction is given up. It's true that one needs to be aware of one's surroundings and that will help making better decisions. But the decisions rest within the individual. And that is what's going to make the society, as you call it, grow slightly healthier, hopefully. Though I'm not holding my breath. All right, let's skip a bit now. And we're going to go to a bit in which he discusses a film if he's seen. A Japanese film.
I think that's what makes this film so subversive. Because it forces you to ask, what if the meaning of life isn't somewhere out there, but instead it's in the 5 square feet of space directly in front of you? What if you don't need to go find yourself? Because ultimately there is no separate self, and you're content cleaning a toilet really, really well.
Pause. A few very important things. He is starting to reach the points that I was making earlier in an abstract form. A premise before I say anything else. The interpretation of any form of art in films is fundamentally subjective. He is arguing at the moment that it isn't. That this is the objective interpretation of all people watching. That's the problem with this collectivization. It makes individuals such as this chap make gross mistakes such as this one. Now, with that premise set aside, I'm going to, in the sense that me with you people here, whoever you are and wherever you are and how many of you there are going to go down this thought experiment when I and you, we accept this interpretation of his as perfect and everything. Now, so near yet so far, because yes, that one can find meaning in cleaning a toilet really, really, really well. But the point is the really, really, really well. What does that imply? It implies that the individual who has cleaned the toilet has put passion, interest, effort into becoming adept and in fact excellent at that particular task, and takes pride in seeing that toilet sparkle. That is absolutely correct, and it refutes 100% that giving up. It in fact hides a typical, I would say no offense, but I suppose there is some offense here. It conceals a typical disdain for the mundane by the intellectualoids. Absolutely typical. Cleaning a toilet is inherently less worth it than writing a book, as an example. Absolute rubbish. That's the typical, as my Marxist friend would say, bourgeois way of thinking. Ironically, because Marx was exactly a bourgeois, but setting that aside. Okay? It's like, that's beneath me. Cleaning toilets is beneath me. It isn't. It is exactly possible to take enormous pride and enormous meaning in life in doing jobs that others don't want to do the best way one can. One could be the best prison warden there is. One could be the best teacher in an elementary school that there is, who takes pride in seeing all of his or her students come out as actually better people than when they came in. The rarity of this, I use this particular example because the rarity of a good teacher is, they're like hen's teeth. Right? Teaching is a particularly awful position that useless people go to when they can't make it in anything else all the time. Don't care what anybody says, that's a fact. Anybody observing into their own past, they will remember 2 teachers or 3 teachers that were excellent and they had 60. The ratio is scary, okay? Teachers, professors, whatever. So, yes, you're right. One can receive enormous meaning from something small and seemingly insignificant. But no, you're wrong. It's not because of what you say. It's not because it's not because the activity is small and insignificant. It's in spite of the fact that the activity is small and insignificant. To draw a parallel analogy with modern times, it seems to me that it's become very popular, very common among young people to desire being famous on the internet for fame's sake. Doesn't matter what they do, doesn't matter how they do it, doesn't matter why they do it, they want to be famous. When I was young, where I am from, or rather where I lived at the time, this would have been being a famous actor. Everybody wanted to be a famous actor for some reason. I, however, at the time, as now, always thought that actors are useless people. Because what actors are is they are pretenders. They are people who pretend to be somebody. And the measurement of their success is them pretending to be somebody very effectively, very convincingly. Which is great. It's a craft. But it's not a particularly meaningful thing to me. It is irrelevant. I studied in university, stupidly I went. It had some advantages, but whatever. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But we are going to touch on this. I studied translation and interpretation. That is the definition of meaningless. It's taking meaning from point A and moving it to point B. You're literally a house remover for meaning. But I did do it. And it's terrible. I'm sure there are some people out there that find meaning in this. I'm not one of them. In fact, I know one who prides himself of doing great translations. Of doing great translations. Italian chap, very important person in my life at one point, and we kind of lost touch now, but whatever. So, taking pride in what you do and doing it the best you can is the definition of the ambition that you refer to as when you say that it's what builds the society, what runs society. And you essentially arguing that the contrary, or at least that's my interpretation, I apologize if it's wrong, but I don't think it is. You instead arguing that becoming content with the little you have, like I said, conceals your disdain for that. That's not little. If you build the best tables that there is, you're a great carpenter. If you're the best QA person that finds the most bugs and files them in such a way that nobody has a need more info coming back, you're an excellent QA person. The fact that that particular position isn't valued very much is reasonably excused by various elements, but it doesn't mean you can't be excellent at it. In fact, that's what tends to earn you promotions. Trust me, I know. And then you transition into other places where you ironically may be worse, like middle management. The goal of life is finding your talent, chasing them, and then exercising them to their fullest potential. Mamba mentality. Get better every day a little bit. That is the goal of life for the self. And one of its manifestations is earn more money and therefore get a bigger house, etc., etc., etc. In other words, that's not vapid desire. It's a physical manifestation of your progress. And a very, 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 very clean toilet is a physical manifestation of this man's success, not of his failure or not of his resignation. That's how I interpret it. It's very different. Okay, where are we going next? This one is interesting. It's a good video, this. It's got a lot of interesting things to talk about. So thank you, sir.
All the time. It terrifies them.
Yeah. This last thing he said is ridiculous. He talks about a system that it's terrified by you exiting the rat race. And no system is terrified by you deciding to leave. Nobody cares. So anyway, but moving on, because this is what I actually wanted to probably focus on.
Do you ever notice how every app now feels like a slot machine that occasionally gives you emotional validation instead of money? There's, I don't know, a little red bubble, a heart, maybe a new follower. And we're living inside a Vegas casino run by behavioral psychologists, where, of course, the house always wins.
It was very accurate until the final sentence. This is the very reason I left the video game industry, at least in my head. I still want to work in it because it's a good use of my skills and it pays the bills. But I really don't want to contribute to making products like these where psychologists are driving the design. I want to make a game that's excellent. I don't want to make a game that's enslaving. I'm looking at you Ubisoft. Or anybody else really. But yes. What is it that he said last? I need to hear it again. Damn it.
Psychologists. Where, of course, the house always wins.
No.
Because dopamine isn't happiness. It's the chemical of anticipation.
Honestly, I do not know if it is or isn't. The house doesn't always win. The house may make some profit, but the house doesn't exist because the house is a bunch of people. And some people are very happy to make profit. Some people are very happy to be compensated with that machinery. So it's a bit more complex than that. It's not so much that the house wins, is that you lose, which is different. Because the house isn't playing. The house is giving you what you seemingly want. Panem et circenses, or circenses. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it in Latin. The way I learned it, it had the Italian C's. So circenses. Anyway, the point is, the slot machine that's there is sitting there. You go and pull the lever. Something happens or doesn't happen. You pull the lever again. The house wins in the sense that you are putting your quarters in and losing them. And sometimes you get some pellets of feedback back. However, you're the one putting the quarter in, you're the one putting the lever. It takes nothing to refuse to engage with this. It is in fact the simplest thing you could ever do. So much so, I would argue, that nowadays, literally every app, as you have said, correctly by the way, that is a slot machine. Well, in that case, all you need to do is you use the bits of the app that aren't a slot machine, and you ignore the bits of the app that are a slot machine. And it's becoming very common, I think. I'll give you an analogy. In the video game industry, I started when we used to work on the PlayStation 2. Okay? So the PlayStation 2, or that era. So the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox would have been machines that did not have something that was invented later by Microsoft with the Xbox, and then Xbox 360, I'm sorry, and then the PlayStation 3 copied hurriedly in a really, really terrible way, by the way. And that is the concept of achievements. Achievements are a cross-game objective system that essentially measures how much you completed in a game, and then that creates a score, and that score, each game can reach 1,000. Then if you have some expansions or DLCs as they're called, you can get additional chunks like 200s or whatever. Doesn't matter particularly. Point is, if I play a game to its full completion, I will have 1,000 points. This 1,000 points isn't confined to the game. It's now attached to my profile and it's accumulating through all of the games. So if I have fully completed 50 games, I will have 50,000 achievement points. And that was a game changer, because what that started doing is it started gamifying the act of playing. When I was young, I would play a game to its completion because I wanted to. And if I didn't want to complete it, I wouldn't. It had an internal completion system, and it was self-contained. It was beautiful. I loved games at the time. Nowadays, I play games a lot less, because all games have lost all respect for my time. They have become this eternal chain of meaningless, pointless tasks that I simply need to repeat to reach a certain completion for the goal of having the kudos outside of the game. Nowadays, every single video game on every single platform has exactly the same conceptual structures. So there's an overarching progress that even Steam has achievements. They are meaningless, but it does have them. I don't know modern consoles. I'm a bit out of the loop, but I'm sure they have them. Yeah, it's remarkable. Excuse me, it's a bit late. It's remarkable how common this is, because it's latching onto that fundamental desire of ambition, and it distorts it, as you are pointing out. So it's an important thing you're pointing out. And it's enslaving my own children, as an example. And it's omnipresent. So all one needs to do is one needs to decide, this does not interest me, and walk away. Once again, who is in charge? You are, or I am. The individual is. Yes, there's a million temptations. Yes, it's a difficult situation. Fine. These are the circumstances in which I live. This is what I must do to go in the direction I want to do. Simple. Does that make sense? I think it should. So let's see. Next. Okay. There's another bit over here I want to talk about.
About that. Now, that probably sounds impressive until you figure out that most of what we're doing is arguing on the internet about things that, nobody really understands. And it's pretty clear in these batshit crazy times that we're just drowning in all this.
I don't really want to go down too long of a tangent on this, but the arguing on the internet is a very interesting real problem that I haven't yet figured out very well myself. There's a lot of elements that are playing a part in this. I'll give an example. When I used to work at a certain company, there were various seminars being given by various other companies. Now, one of the seminars that I attended was the seminar by an individual that was in charge of resolving the problem of what the industry refers to as player toxicity in a product called League of Legends from a company called Riot. And what he argued they had discovered statistically and observationally is that whenever players were behaving in a very, very, very rude way to one another, that's what toxicity fundamentally means, and they were getting banned, etc., frequently they would find themselves being quite apologetic and seemingly sincerely about their behavior. And when then prompted why they had behaved the way they did, they would cite external sources like I had a very stressful day, or I had just had a row with my wife, whatever, that sort of thing. The internet seems to be the internet is too vague a term, but communication on the internet seems to suffer from problems that exist within people's lives. Lack of respect, lack of honor, lack of deference to seniority or expertise, general unnecessary irreverence, unpleasantness all around. And it's definitely spilling into the real world as well. But certainly not as much as it is on the internet. On the internet, communication is truly baffling. The level of negative exchanges that happen, like for example on my very channel here, if I post an opinion that is not shared by a number of the people watching, the comments will potentially be very negative, which I'm fine with. The thumbs will be down. I'm fine with that as well. But a lot of the comments, usually when they are negative, they are basically insults. They're kind of valueless. So I don't really engage with those at all. If I get feedback that is more substantial and substantive, then I might respond. I usually do. Certainly now that the channel is tiny. But the communication on the internet is just rude. And I do it as well. Well, I did it much more than I do it now. This is another area in which I have consciously attempted to change. But it is an interesting observation that on the internet so much exchange is so displeasing, so unpleasant. And I think that's one of the things that, although unwittingly I suspect, motivates this desire and intent to have more of a relationship in real life. But it does become difficult because, like I was saying, I think it's spilling into real life a lot. So there's rudeness in real life, particularly coming from youth, because youth are trained and raised on this communication system, on the internet. They are astonishingly rude now. It's just a complete waste of time. I think I was as well, though, when I was 17, and I certainly was when I was a younger adult. So I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum. It's something I should possibly spend more time on, but I don't know that I have the time to theorize on these things as much as I would possibly need to come up with sort of intelligent answers. I don't know. Anyway, this was an interesting point to focus on from my perspective. Let's... I think this will be very soon, so I might as well let him go. Go, my friend. Off you go.
This meaningless data and starving for meaning. And it's not just the phones. It's also our jobs, which have become like psychological endurance tests. I mean, half the workforce sits in front of screens pretending to collaborate on platforms designed to look productive while preventing anyone from doing actual work. So we've managed to gamify our own attention spans into extinction.
Well, I mean, that's a strange thing. Your video is fairly long. You have a fairly large amount of audience. I'm making an even longer video on the back of your video. I'm really unhappy, sir, with your use of the pronoun of the pronoun we. You really ought to stop. I mean, heck, you're successful. I'm not from this perspective, so heck, you're doing what you do you. But you're arguing here throughout the video that things are a bit doom and gloom and stuff. You're presumably talking to this camera because you want to help somebody think. Especially when you launch yourself into highfalutin quotes from obscure books or authors, or relatively so. But so this constant hiding behind collectivization is unworthy of your intellect, to be honest. So, yeah.
Have you noticed how adults talk about burnout like it's a rare condition or something? Oh, I had burnout last year. No, you didn't. You live in burnout.
I was going to agree with you so hard, and then you fell from the 17th floor. No, you didn't have burnout. Nobody has burnout ever. Burnout does not exist. Let us put things in perspective a little bit. Let us use the power of our memory, of our childhood. I'm reasonably confident you're older than me, sir. But let's say you're 45 or 50 or something to that effect. Okay? I'm 41. So I'm sure your memory stretches further back than mine. So you have an advantage over me. Okay. Now your grandpa possibly either fought in the Second World War or went through it in some form. Now kindly, would you like to argue to me how working a crappy office job, it makes you burnt out? Now this isn't an elitist argument, especially because if anything I would need to be arguing on the opposite side, right? It's not an elitist argument of they had it worse, therefore I today can't have a problem. Of course I can. I have my own problems and that's fine. But burnout in particular, it's such a silly, abstract, fake condition. Like I myself have used, I think, the terminology before, also in other videos, but that's just because I need to play the game with you lot who keep on using these stupid words. What do you mean to say I was tired? Did you mean to say that? No, you don't mean to say that. I know you don't mean to say that. Because otherwise you would have said I was exhausted. And you didn't. Right? You said I was burned out last year or whatever. And now you said everybody, of course you were referring to an example, whatever. And now you're saying, no, you weren't burned out last year. You live burnt out. You're always burnt out. What? Like, I've worked in offices, man. I've worked with lifers. I've worked with people that don't do jack while in the office, but they're still burnt out. It's a fantastic cop-out, isn't it? My own daughter, who I gave the example of before, I'm always tired, I go to sleep late, I'm always busy, etc. And then, what, 7 hours on the mobile phone? How are you burnt out? You're dumb, I'll give you that. You're not in control, I'll give you that as well. But you don't have a right to be burnt out when you cause it to yourself. And you can't call it burnt out when you didn't do anything. It's complete nonsense, man. And I speak as somebody who has regularly worked. You know, I don't want to exaggerate, but I am reasonably confident 100-hour weeks. Because if you do 16 hours in the weekend, that will quickly get you to 100. You know, it's... And you do get tired after doing it a bit. Heck, I remember this scene when I worked in my first company that I worked for. I was doing the night shift, if I remember correctly, and we were doing 12-hour shifts because we were crunching to finish this enormous, very important product, this game. It was a big team. I was very, very fond of that work. And one time, I went to my boss, and I asked him if I could take the Saturday off. And he asked me, why do you want your Saturday off? And I said, I don't really have a good answer. It's because I'm tired. And he said to me, yeah, but Mike, everybody's tired. Why should I give you your time off because you're tired when I have denied it to a lot of other people with the same rationale? And I thought for a bit in his office and said, you know, you're right. I'm sorry. And I walked away. Now, modern people would think that what I did is insane and that this is all insane, etc., etc. I did a video about crunch in the video game industry just earlier today. But I appreciated that because I was failing to be empathetic towards my colleagues. Somebody was going to have to pull my weight because I was tired. And then the interesting thing that he said was, listen, if you're really tired, I'll give you I'll give you your day off. And then I insisted, no, it's okay. You make a good point. And I went like, I'm not, you're right. And I went back. And I did that Saturday, if I remember right. I'm reasonably confident. It's been so long that I don't remember. But, you know, and anybody nowadays would have called that being burnt out. And I was tired. Then ironically, later in a different company, I eventually held the record for most days in a row of work. And I don't remember exactly, but I think it was 59. It includes every Saturday, every Sunday. Yeah. I was tired after. You know, listen, I don't want to like toot my own horn or whatever or commiserate myself. I'm just saying, this word is thrown around a lot. Just like the word depression, just like the word Ritalin, just like the word ADHD. Oh, goodness gracious, are we fond of that one? I'm using the nos majestatis we, just so we're clear. Anyway, I sleep sometimes. Sleep. Sleep? I don't sleep, I slip. So, damn Italian. That's what it does to me. But the... yeah, no, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. it is such a fantastic excuse for the lazy of mind as well as of body, to use the terminology. Nobody's burnt out. Everybody claims they are, but nobody is. In fact, it looks like I dedicated a bit here to the we. I might as well talk about it. To the we, I don't mean urine. I mean the pronoun.
But we've basically created a world where the goal is no longer to live. It's to cope. And somehow manage the chaos instead of questioning why it's there in the first place.
I will agree with the last bit, but there is no we. Enough with this. I mean, I keep on shouting at the wall about this, but nobody will stop doing it. You have created a world in which you have this level of sadness. I have not, and I'm not in it. I'm generally rather happy. I joke all the time with my family to the point of exhaustion of my children when they are not happy because I keep on doing it. No, I'm generally very happy. It's 4:30 a.m. right now and I keep on doing this. And it's a 1 hour and 30-minute video without any pauses. So, no, there is no we. We haven't created a world. And world as well. Come on, man. Come on. You're clearly American. You may have read a couple books and you may have traveled a few places and you may have gone various places and so on and so forth and done various things, but you are so myopic over the world. Again, unworthy of somebody with what seems to be a fairly solid intellect for you to say a world. I mean, I know it's rhetoric, and I'm reasonably confident that I've done it as well. But all of this collective stuff, you know, if there is a piece of unwelcome advice, unwelcome and unprompted advice that I shall give you, is that I really think you would deeply benefit from training yourself not to desire things, apparently, as you suggest, but also not to utilize the plural pronouns. Because getting rid of those, I am firmly convinced, would help you see problems that you face and that you want to address with yourself and your surroundings and your little island much more effectively. And communicate better as well. Though it might get you less likes. That I'll hand you. But I thought you didn't care. That's what you've communicated to me, so I believe you. What can I say? All right, let's carry on.
Answer is necessarily smashing the machines or going off to live in the woods, because that too has been romanticized.
Mm-hmm.
The digital detox, the off-grid fantasy. You go out into nature to escape the algorithm, and then you spend the whole time hiking, filming it for your followers. So, the real rebellion isn't withdrawal, it's awareness.
That's a non sequitur. Withdrawal is an action. Awareness is a state. So that doesn't work at all. I think you're a bit confused here. So you've touched on the whole off-grid thing, or living off the land or whatever. And basically you've said that it's not as meaningful as people make it out to be on the internet, considering the fact that they are indeed on the internet televising it, fundamentally speaking. I personally think the reason why people are televising it is I think there's three prongs to this reason. to this rationale. Reason number one, they're lonely. So this form of communication on the internet is still superior to no communication at all, to being a hermit. Reason number two, it does help pay the bills, as I'm sure you know, as somebody who is prominently putting that silver plaque on his fridge. So presumably you get something. You probably get something from me watching this video right now. It's not a lot, but you know, with many of me, it starts becoming a something. And third is it gives them purpose. It actually, ironically, helps in the direction of having some ambition. They think, probably, as I suspect you do, that they are helping other people. I think these are the three reasons why most people are going to televise their going off-grid, assuming they're honest in their off-gridding. But I don't think that you're correct in your interpretation of saying that people go off-grid because they want to escape the algorithm. Otherwise, they would indeed not touch the internet. And there's hundreds of thousands of people that do it. Well, hundreds of thousands may be an exaggeration. Sorry, there's thousands of people who do it. I mean, I know a lot, so I'm going to assume we can go in the thousands comfortably. But all of them don't televise anything. Because they don't televise anything, you don't see them. Because of the fact that you don't see them, you effectively think they don't exist. It's got nothing to do with detox. Going to live off-grid is got to do with a dramatic reduction of your economic footprint and your requirements. And working for yourself. I think this actually wraps a beautiful bow around my initial point. What people are doing when they go off-grid, they become kulaks. So they start working the land and similar things in order to improve their lives in a way that is meaningful to them. When you acquire chicken, say you buy it, and you prepare its shelter, and you protect it at night, and it starts giving you eggs, it is a meaningful progress. Then you build its fence around it if you want to fence it, or you let it roam around happily. It is meaningful progress. Ooh, you just gave me an idea. I could let my chickens out during the day to free roam so they can clean up the grass. Ooh, clever Mike. Sorry. just had a little weird brain fart. But, but there you go. Or, you can start cleaning your septic tank, or you can start making loquat jam, like in my case, or in my wife's case, I suppose. I harvest, she jams. And it's a lot of hard work, but it's your stuff and you have your jam. I now just need to go to my pantry, where I built the shelves. Assembled, I suppose, would be more accurate. So let's not do stolen valor here. But on those shelves, we have put all of the winter food that we have prepared. Me and my wife and the children. Okay, that's inherently meaningful. We're working for our own selves. Throughout the entire summer, we had loads of tomatoes because we grew them. As an example. Being Mediterraneans, we really like tomatoes. That's really the off-grid thing. It's got nothing to do with the not being electronic. That's just incidental. Plus, it's not true. People off-grid are very electronic on purpose. So, let me skip one of these notes, because if I remember correctly, the first time I watched this, I was getting irritated. Let me see. I'm gonna pop around to here. So there's 2 more points. Whoa, what you loading? Huh?
Thriving.
There you go.
In some insane environment. Just quietly deciding you don't want to play anymore. Now, you'll do what you need to survive, of course. Pay the bills, show up. But you just stop selling your soul for dopamine pellets. This isn't rebellion with the fireworks. It's rebellion with stillness. Just sitting there in your own peace and quiet while the world screams for attention and not responding. That's what peace looks like now. Not calm music and candles, just not reacting.
But what you're describing is as old as the planet, my friend. That's what my grandpa would do. He would just go into his own little shop and do whatever he wanted to do. That's what people do when they play video games. They go and play their video games. That's it. Or when you listen to music or whatever it is. There's just plenty of this, my friend. Plenty. Now, lots of people also, including you, clearly, interact online. But what you're describing is already happening, has been happening forever, has been happening before the internet. You can't call it a rebellion when it's always happened. Rebellion against what? The reason I'm underlining this is because the problem, again, does not reside in the world around you. It resides inside your head. Which you agree with me on to some extent. But you keep on bringing the external circumstances out to the forefront like they're actually important. They're not. Circumstances are just the scenario in which you live. And you do something about it. I think, for example, the circumstance that I described with taxation at the beginning of this video is dramatically more relevant than what you're saying right now. Tremendously. Everything you're saying right now is really trivial. Not talking to people is trivial. Not responding to messages is trivial. In fact, I would argue that it's now so common that I am baffled. Like, it will happen that I send a message to somebody potentially important about something with either a question or an explanation to something they've asked or a confirmation of an appointment or something, right? And I won't get an answer. Yes, there's a lot of noise out there, so what? There, I'll give you an example. When you apply to jobs nowadays, it is entirely normal for companies not to respond. And they will say stuff like, or they will send you an automated response that says something like, due to the large volume of applications, we are not able to respond to everybody. I'm sorry. What are you talking about, man? 20 years ago, when I was applying for positions and people were applying for positions, the HR departments didn't exist. The guy that was looking at the applications was the same guy that was like doing some other very important task. Now you got HR departments with like 15 women in it. And they can't process a couple of emails coming in. That is almost all of today's world. Hey, I use the term world myself. Almost all of today's accusations, or I can't think of the right word right now, which is a little bit frustrating. I apologize. But the what he's describing is just this sort of like manifestation of mental sloth that everybody seems to have and seems to be very keen on being protected from criticism towards. Okay? You're lazy. You're intellectually lazy. Stop responding. At some point in the video, I don't think I included it here in these notes that I've taken, but he says, accept being bored. Are you mental? No. Being bored is a terrible situation. Right? This doesn't mean you need to fidget to keep yourself entertained. You're still bored. Right? What you need to be is you need to be honest with yourself and say, okay, I am not doing anything meaningful. This is bothering me right now. Is there a way in which I can address this? And be honest about it. Be intelligent about your own criticism. Be honest with your criticism and then act upon it. You're going to be a very happy person if you do this. That's why so many of these stupid channels that keep on telling men to go and bulk up in a gym for reasons that are honestly baffling to me, okay, are so successful, because that is meaningful progress that you see. You go to the gym, you lift a bit, you become a little bit bigger. Day by day, eventually you're big, and then you lift more and more and more, and you become exactly the same self-perpetuating retardation, cyclical growth for no reason at all. I don't know. I want to be an Adonis. Okay, what? Why? I mean, when you collapse with the first question that starts with W, it's a little bit sad. So, anyway, I went down rant lane for a moment there, apologies. But the point is, this entire video raises some very important and valuable concerns, and then it just crashes down on top of itself by suggesting that laziness and complacency is the answer. It isn't. It categorically is not the answer. It is a coping mechanism, which you yourself have said. It's not choosing peace. It's retreating into it. In order to choose peace, you need to achieve it by acting towards it. And now we will conclude. Finally, Mike, well done. Yes, it's almost 2 hours. Isn't that lovely? How to guarantee nobody's ever going to watch this. I'm going to move to this bit where he says a sentence that in my opinion is absolutely emblematic of what I've just narrated, and we'll conclude on that.
You'll get lonely, and you'll still get sucked into the vortex and realize you just lost 3 hours watching videos of people cleaning their kitchens or whatever. It's all right. We all relapse. It's important to note here that the point isn't perfection. It's never perfection. It's consciousness. It's noticing when you've fallen asleep and when you've been hypnotized by the noise. And when that happens, you pause and you say, oh, right, I'm in the maze again. And then you step off the wheel. And it takes practice.
Sir, why would you practice if you weren't aiming for perfection? Perfection manifested in this particular case, by the way, another one of these stupid words used incorrectly. Perfection manifested in this particular scenario as the protection, essentially infallible protection from falling back into the relapsing that you just spoke of. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you never relapsed? Wouldn't it be great if you were indeed sober? Because it would be, wouldn't it? That's what would be perfection in this particular poetic expression of yours. The consciousness is the equivalent of you saying that admitting to a problem is the first step. Don't disagree. But the ambition, the goal, is indeed not to need to admit to it anymore, for it has been resolved. Actually, this is a great conclusion. I'm going to go with this. I have a maxim in my life. Whenever there is something that bothers you, you call it a problem. If you're an honest man, you're going to sit down and you're going to think. You're going to say, okay, I have this thing that bothers me, and it's a problem that it bothers me. I have two possible routes. I can accept the condition and stop finding it bothersome. Or I can keep finding it bothersome and therefore work to resolve it. In other words, when a problem is experienced, you triage said problem introspectively, and you say, this problem is going to stay, is going to bother me. If it keeps on bothering me, I'm going to leave it in the category of a problem. However, if I have determined that this particular characteristic, which is presently called a problem, is indeed a characteristic I have no intention of addressing to any degree, well, indeed, it is not a problem, it is now a constant. This is a programming or a mathematical concept, okay? It is a feature, it's a quirk, okay? I'll give you an example. I am fat, I am overweight, substantially. I'm pretty sure I'm clinically obese. Even though I don't feel that way because I can go up and down stairs, I lift weights, not in the sense that I go around pretending to be Schwarzenegger. I lift physical bags when I need to carry them, say fertilizer bags or pellet bags, that sort of stuff. Without much issue. So, and I can still fold myself in Lotus Elise on the regular. So, I don't know. Am I fat? I guess I am. I mean, I'm definitely fat, but how fat I am, I don't know. Right? And I sat down and I said, okay, being fat obviously makes me worse. I'm slower, I work harder, I put more wear and tear on all of my body parts, whatever. Do I want to do anything about it? Well, considering that the only way to lose weight is to essentially not eat, and then I would need to exercise as well. Well, I don't exercise for numerous reasons. One is my job, generally speaking. Two, I'm a very intellectual person fundamentally, so it's unlikely that I'll exercise. Okay, so I don't see that entering my life. And what about not eating? Well, I'm Italian. I quite like to eat. And I have an Italian wife who cooks very well. And she takes pride in her cooking. So it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to exaggerate, but it's almost like a mating ritual between us. You know, she cooks it, she prepares the thing with great care, and then I consume it, and I am very, very happy. Right? If a woman thinks that she controls her husband through his stomach, a husband sees the expression of a wife's scare through the appreciation of the product that enters his stomach. So, without wishing to be too poetic, but succeeding inevitably, I am very happy to be fat. I don't think it's a good thing. I think being fat is terrible. I think it's really stupid. But I am fat and I shall remain fat. In fact, so much so that any idiot would call me a hypocrite, because I have told my children, as long as I am responsible for your existence and I pay for it, you are not allowed to be fat. None of you. So they have all sorts of pretty severe limitations on what food they can eat. For example, severe limitations. They're not severe. They're just strict in the sense that they can have one treat per day. And a treat would be a sweet of some sort. Okay? When they're that young, the metabolism works just fine. It's really not an issue. But they get their portion of food, 3 meals a day, and then they get one treat in the evening that they can consume whenever they want or however they want. But it's only one every time. It's worked like a charm. My older children are now teenagers, and they are all very, very lean. And none of them see this as a problem. None of them see the fact that I overconsume food, for example, as a problem, because I have turned my problem into a constant. That's the first step. Second, I have rationally explained why I've done it. Third, I have rationally explained why I expect them not to do it so long as I am in control of their health. Simple. See, this is how you really help yourself in life. You have a problem, and this is, by the way, a message to everybody in the audience as well as my children in particular. You have a problem, you analyze the problem. If you're willing to do something about that problem, the problem remains a problem, and you owe it to yourself to attack that problem. Diligently. Will you relapse, as he said? Of course. Will there be issues? Of course. But unlike what he says, the aim is not consciousness. The starting point is consciousness. The aim is indeed perfection. It is solving that problem, which is in this particular confined thought space is the manifestation of perfection. The problem is now gone, right? It's solved. You're sober. You don't relapse at all because there's nothing to relapse to. That's perfection. That's its manifestation. However, if you decide actively that there is nothing you want to do about that problem, in that case, you're not allowed to complain about that problem. You're not allowed to moan about it. You're not allowed to sulk about it. That's not a problem. It's now a constant. I'm fat and perfectly fine with it. That's it. I'm not claiming I'm beautiful at any size. I'm not claiming that I'm healthy. I am not. But I have accepted I will live nice. I will live 5 less years, as an example, on average, whatever the numbers is, I don't care. The number is. But I will be as fat as I am okay with being, because I have no intention of taking steps towards changing that, which means it just doesn't bother me anymore at all. That's it. Apply this trick to your life in everything. It's not even a trick, man. It should be obvious. It's a technique, whatever you want to call it. And your probability of being indeed content is going to increase dramatically, because you will look at the bathroom that you just made shine and you're going to go, I did that. Not too shabby. And on that note, good night to everybody.